I know you've got an ear out for the start of the podcast, but before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind you to keep an eye out for Darryl Lee's limited edition Christmas treats, because they're in stores now. Like the iconic Christmas nougat pudding, so yummy and a gorgeous little gift. And some delicious Chrissy-themed twists on your favourite treats, like the Darryl Lee Rockley Road with chewy red and green jelly pieces, green and red crunchy milk chocolate balls, my favourites, and green apple and strawberry flavoured licorice. Watch them disappear. Your Christmas treats table will pop with colour and scrumptiousness. Spread some joy, bring the fun, and enjoy the Christmas tradition that is Darryl Lee. Hurry before they sell out. Darryl Lee makes Christmas better. Welcome to The Five of My Life with me, Nigel Marsh. As an author, adman and theologian, I've always been interested in people's stories. Not just those with a high profile, but people from all walks of life, regardless of fame. Which is why I created this show. Each guest who takes the 5 of My Life challenge chooses a favourite film, book, song, place and possession. They tell me their choices in advance so I can research them, but they don't tell me why they've chosen them. That's the subject of our conversation. It's amazing what you can learn when discussing someone's 5 choices. I hope you enjoy listening to the show as much as I enjoy making it. Stuart Dickinson, Australia's most capped rugby referee, officiating at 3 World Cups, a record, was the wrong person for the robber to attempt to shoot at point-blank range. As modest as he is impressive, Stuart is a true leader and a one-off. Stuart Dickinson, welcome to 5 of My Life.
Nigel, thanks for having me. It's a great honour.
Well, I've been looking forward to this for weeks, mate, so thank you so much for coming on. Before we get into your choices, have you been listening to any episodes? You've got any standout stories or guests from the past episodes?
Yeah, so look, there's been a heap of them. Monica McInerney was great, and I say that specifically about being the writer, but also my wife and mother-in-law love her books and everything else, so it's great, and really enjoyed Chris Marshall.
Oh, he's hilarious, wasn't he? Yeah.
I did listen to Albo the other day, so that's always good to hear the other side of the politicians, because you only get one side, whether people are blue, white, for whichever team they're playing for, etc. So that's always interesting to hear that. But it's great. It's just a great concept, and as I said, a real honour to be here.
No, well, mate, but I'm really looking forward
It's only me.
I'm really looking forward to hearing you chat about your choices. And as always on 5 of My Life, we start with the film. And you've chosen Richard Attenborough's anti-apartheid epic, Cry Freedom. 1987 it was released. 2.5 hours long you put me through, mate. Tell me about that choice.
Look, I think it's probably a growth piece at the end of the day, where, I was only a couple of years out of school, had some really good mates and sort of said, oh, let's have a look at this thing. And I think you're starting to open the world up, as it were, and certainly through school, I'd taken an interest in some of the politics, and you start to open your eyes up and get beyond your own, 2 square feet and see the rest of the world. So had seen and read a lot about Desmond Tutu, and had seen a fair bit of stuff with Africa. And then this film came out, and it's just a really powerful story, and a couple of Muppets like Washington and, Kevin Kline inside of that. But the powerful story there of that change, what people went through, human nature, that whole gamut really around life and humanity at the end of the day. And I guess, we're witnessing some of that now with our friend Vlad and Ukraine and everything else. And, why don't we learn from the past at the end of the day?
So I hadn't seen the film, and obviously I watched it because you chose it. The Stephen Biko story is deeply upsetting. I went down a rabbit hole about him after having watched the film, and I was a little bit conflicted by the film because have you watched it recently, or was it ages ago?
I haven't watched it again for a while, so you've sort of got the top line view at the end of the day.
So for me, it's like a film in 2 parts. So you've got the Biko story, which is incredible, but it's a 2.5 hour long film. It then, after the poor bastard dies, you then get into the amazing story about Donald Woods, the journalist, trying to escape, which is an amazing real life story. But the film, I think Attenborough made a mistake, because the film should have just been about the things that you've just been talking about the appalling injustice of apartheid and all those poor people who died in prison at the hands of the police and blah, blah, blah. So a real eye-opener. And for many of my generation, it was all Mandela and not, I didn't know much about Stephen Biko. And it's terribly upsetting and sad. And you're right. We don't seem to... we solve one issue and we just create another.
Yeah, look, it's I hadn't heard of BK before at that time, and then obviously you see all that, and I think probably with Attenborough doing the other side as well, I think he's probably just trying to balance that up around what that looked like. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, that's courage personified by both people just trying to be able to tell a story. And if we looked at that, if people would watch that film today and they go, oh my goodness, how could that even happen?
Yeah.
Well, it did, and that was what the times were and everything else. So I think that was really an entree into really just opening your eyes up and seeing what's out there. And then, for me, we'll probably get onto some rugby stuff later and whatever else, but seeing that whole South African piece and then being over there, I mean, it's a special place. If people haven't been there, I mean, it's incredible.
Well, we're staying in the 80s for your second choice on Five of My Life. 1989, an ad executive for 30 years decided to write his first book, and it became the most successful book Australia has ever seen. It sold over 9 million copies. Bryce Courtney's The Power of One is your choice on Five of My Life. Tell us about that, Stuart.
Actually, there's a bit of relevance there for you, isn't it, mate? Ad executive that sold winning books and things. So, look, I think there's plenty of other books that I've read and everything else. And you talked about, let's have one of the favourites, but I think that's very much in the same vein around that of just that discovery piece around and that human story of triumph, of personal growth, I guess, as it were, the circumstances in which he grew up, and it's obviously based partially, mostly, whatever a percentage on his life as to what he did, and the history inside of that as well, of where it came from. We look at the British over there as well, starting the first lot of concentration camps and all that sort of stuff, and so I think there's a history piece in there, there's a humanity piece, there's a growth piece, a learning piece, something that it was different from our world, as I said, my 2 square feet that you live in when you're a young kid growing up, and so I think that was really important just to see that, and it really I guess just took me on a bit of a journey, I guess, at the end of the day. And he writes very powerfully, and you can really get inside the book and really visualise all of that. So it's an amazing story to read. It's
a real page turner. One of the themes in it is PK, the hero, gets bullied mercilessly at school, and one of the ways that he learns, apart from learning how to box, to deal with that is to become a storyteller.
Yes.
And Find My Life is about stories. But it made me want to ask you about how you deal and have dealt with referee abuse. So be it parents, be it spectators, be it players. So, someone tells you to sling your hook, and that goes with the territory. And as Australia's most capped referee, you must have had to cop a bit of that. What strategies do you use to stay calm and not tell them to F off back?
Look, I think probably one of those things is it's a learnt skill at the end of the day. So when you first start, you like all those things, you're just trying to do your best. And so you'll take a lot of that on board of, was it really that bad, etc. And then as you grow a bit more and then you understand what you're doing and you get better and better, and then you get that confidence in yourself and you're there knowing what you're doing, making those decisions. So it's not about a popularity contest. They don't have to like you. It's just about being respected, and that's the players on the field, and then the punters off field. Well, they've paid their money, they're passionate about their team and all those sorts of things, and so you have no control over that at the end of the day. But it was funny places you would go and travel to, and there'd be people screaming at you and things written about you and all that sort of stuff, and then people would pull up a chair if they found you. Oh, I'd like to have a chat with you about something. Yeah, sure, no worries. Give them 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, because it costs nothing to do that. And they go, oh, wow, okay. Oh, that's a bit different. I didn't think you're not as bad as I thought you were. Okay, very good. So that's fine. So I think it's just having that consciousness yourself of just being very clear on what you're doing. You're there as a decision maker in the game. You're a facilitator. They know the laws of the game. They know what they're doing. And you've just got to, I would say to captains before a game, I'll make sure it's a fair contest. Then it's up to you blokes whether it's even, because I think that's probably one of those things for me that, and I guess maybe those movies and books and everything else, why they had a bit of a profound effect really was about, I guess, that equity and fairness issue for people, just that's fair. And then if you're better than the other team and can do it properly and more skillful, then you should be rewarded, as opposed to other teams and things that kill the ball or are just so negative, which just spoils the day for everybody.
Well, one of the things, researching you and looking through your highlights reel, which is rather fantastic, you have refereed some of the most important games in my life that I've been at in the stadium. And I won't hold you to blame for the Lions, but there you go. It is incredibly impressive, Stuart, how you stay calm. I mean, that is, for me, is not a natural thing. If you've got 80,000 people shouting at you, your decision, is going to affect the result of a game, and you exude this aura of calmness. Do they coach that in you? Do they tell you how to do it, or it's just bitter experience?
I think there's probably a bit of both in that, of course. So when you start off, you're pretty raw and got lots of things to chip away at, and then eventually you become better and better. There's always a conversation. So it's like anything. The book's there about how to do something, and some people can do that and some people can't. So there becomes an innate part inside of you of how you deal with that. Are you willing to learn? Are you coachable? Can you review? And ultimately, the first part is, yes, you've got to make mistakes. So you've got to learn. You've got to get the scars on your back, and then eventually you get to a stage. And if I'm coaching younger referees now, you'll see that, oh, I've seen this movie before, right? That's number 42. That's what I'm going to do here, or that's a number 27, or whichever way you decide to do that. But it only just come through experience there. But it's about having that innate, I guess, skill in the first place to be able to try and do that. And I guess ultimately that just comes from the place of where you're standing for that match and who you're being at the end of the day. So I'm very clear that I'm refereeing a game of rugby here, and it's about the players at the end of the day, so they can have a great game and you can create a place where they can play. So if, the ultimate thing was that if they're all going up, then you're the one with ice in your veins, and you've got to just stay cool and calm. And once they've finished, going off their head, as they may occasionally do, then you're the calming voice and the calming influence inside of that.
I love some of the tips and tricks that we have talked about previously. And one of them, my son told me about, where if you've got a guy that's, 2 foot taller than you and 6 stone, heavier than you and looks incredibly violent and imposing, and he's doing something wrong, and you say to his captain, could you bring the number 8 over? So the number 8 is the bloke who's doing the thing that's wrong, and he comes over to his captain, and you ignore him, and you talk to the captain in front of this bloke, and you say to the captain, listen, your number 8 is being a bit of a doofus. If he does that again, he's going for an early shower. And the technique of you not talking to the big bloke, he's standing there and he becomes a little schoolboy because you're talking about him in front of him, but not addressing him. And then you say to the captain, so could you have a word with him, mate? Because, he's going to spoil his day. And then you walk off and you go, brilliant. Whereas an unexperienced person would try and talk direct to that bloke who might give you the evil eye.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just one of those little things. And you know that from running businesses, where the way you operate, and there's a law book, like there's a set of rules at work and all that sort of stuff. Ultimately, it's about how people deal with that. And so inside of those ones, it's about not making it personal, but really getting the message across. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when you're calling the captain out, you've got the big tribal chief out of the tent. And then other times I've done stuff where you'll talk to them. You might talk to the player one-on-one as you're going through and saying, mate, the last thing you want from me is to call you out, because then the coach is going to say to you afterwards, and what were you blokes talking about? So you don't want to make a spectacle as a player for yourself. So, if you can do it firmly but kindly, and they know, and it's one of those things, that I know that that I know that you're in a bit of trouble here, mate, and they skulk away and off they go.
Yeah, I love it. Now, there's 2 other questions I wanted to ask you based around your book choice, Stuart. The first is PK goes through a bit of a religious journey. So he grew up in a religious family and environment, and he turns his back on it. And I wouldn't mind you talking to your religious journey, if there is one. Yeah,
look, we grew up and it was Methodist, and we would go to church on a Sunday and then Sunday school and all those sorts of things. So it was just a fun thing with other kids and having friends and all that sort of stuff. So, and then, at some point we sort of didn't really go anymore. So, for me, probably now it's more about, hatched, matched and dispatched that you get to. And having said that, I get it and understand that for a whole lot of people, whatever that happens to be, if that's a faith or something that you believe in that gets you through, and gives you a standard set of morals and guiding principles and so on and so forth, then so be it. And I think you've got to respect people for as much as being an atheist or a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim or anything else around that. It's what people are doing for them, for their rock, their pillar, to, you know, their North Star, whatever that may be. And I think that's important to acknowledge that for people.
And I think there's two different sort of streams to it. There's a belief set, which is, I completely agree, people can believe whatever gets them through and provides meaning. But there's also sometimes, and I put my dear mum in this, a community thing, where in reality, she wouldn't really know what the local church actually believes anyway, but it's very, very important in her life because that's where she meets everyone on Sunday, and they raise money for charity and et cetera, et cetera. It's almost as equally valuable a role to knit a community together if that's where you find your tribe.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's often missed. I know, talking to some people in the country now, that they're finding there's a lot of, you know, around sport and other things, volunteers are starting to disappear and all that sort of stuff. And I think that sense of community, that's a whole nother question around that now, of mobile phones and, you know, it's all about me and all those sorts of things. So I think that plays a really crucial part anywhere, because, you know, we've had a pandemic and people working from home and all that sort of things. Now, it had a physical effect on people and a medical effect on people, but it hasn't changed the DNA that we are all creatures that want to be together and we want to have a community and we want to be part of something. So there's a balance there that needs to be had.
The second and last question on the book I wanted to ask you is Bryce, who wrote the book, had two separate careers. I mean, he was an advertising person and then he became an author. How have you found your own transition? Because, you know, Australia's most successful referee for a number of years, and then you're now a very successful consultant, but that doesn't involve you wearing, you know, boots and a whistle. You're talking to CEOs and in boardrooms. Was it a welcome change or difficult?
No, look, it was a good change. I think it was one of those things where, you know, when I made the decision, I'm very lucky that I got to make the choice. So some people either get dropped or they get injured and they can't do anymore. Well, I made a choice. I'd been doing it for 16 or 17 years. And so it was, the opportunity then arose just to say, okay, well, let's review this. Where am I? You know, if I look at it from a point of view that I was sort of 26 or something when I started through to 43. And so it was a conscious decision then. So look, commercially, the worst decision I made in my life, because it's not like we were remunerated like the players were. So, you know, standard thing was, if you don't like the contract, good luck with whatever else you choose to do. So that's an interesting way of operating. But having said all of that, I wouldn't trade it for anything. The life experiences and things you've got inside of that, and we'll probably talk a bit more about that later, but ultimately it was a difficult transition. You know, if I look back in hindsight, could I have planned it a bit better? Yeah, probably could have. I mean, I looked at it when I was coming through to say, well, I'm getting out of normal work, I want to get back into some part-time work. I did some study, so I surprised myself. I was that bad at school, I failed recess. So I ended up getting an MBA. So that was really cool. So I had an ambition to put something there inside of that. And ultimately, it was really about finding. So it was always about leadership roles, but realistically, the ultimate place now is I've probably had, if I got to highlight, 3 jobs really where I haven't worked for a living, as it were, and one was being in the police, that, you know, amazing job to be able to do. The second one, my hobby turned into my occupation, refereeing. So I didn't work for, you know, 17 years or whatever it was. And then now with this business that I have with a mate of mine, Steve, with a consulting business, you know, around high performance and leadership and, you know, really transformation of people and organisations. And so, you know, that's all of those skills coming in. It took a little while to get there, but all these things happen for a reason. If I didn't retire that year and go to Queensland with the family to get a particular job up there, and then when I was on the way back, one of the guys at another consulting firm got a hold of me and said, we'd like you to come and work. And then Steve and I met and got on really well. So the door's always open and closed for a particular reason. So it was a great journey.
It's incredibly varied and impressive when you... when you research yourself, mate. I have really enjoyed digging into the backstory. We're moving to your third choice, and yet again, we're in the 1980s. Clearly an important decade for you. We are going to the second single off the third album of Mental as Anything, Cats and Dogs. You have chosen the 1981 song Too Many Times.
Too many times, too many times. Too many times, too many times.
Tell us about that.
Look, again, there could have been a million songs you pick and books and things, and it's not even really that song in particular. It's just that whole genre there for a number of reasons that brings a smile to my face. Is that, you know, we were pretty lucky in growing up in that era there, where you get to the pub and you see the bands. So Midnight Oil, NXS, you've got Hoodoo Gurus, Mental as Anything, all these other bands that end up making it big or whatever else, and these poor kids now don't get to see as much as that. And I look at, you know, with my kids as well. And so it's just memories of great times inside of that. And then you and I share the great luxury of having twin daughters, of course, and I've got an older son as well. And so the other thing around that now is that whilst they were younger and growing up, my wife and I would play that on road trips and whatever else. So they're singing away with these songs and enjoying it, and they still have them now and play them and love them. And the girls in particular say, "Oh, you were so lucky growing up in the 80s, all this music you had and all this stuff." And we said, "Yes, we know. Absolutely." so you can't take that from us.
I hadn't heard that song before. And I can't get it. It's an earworm.
Yeah.
I can't get it out of my head. It is absolutely funny. And then I went down this rabbit hole, as I tend to do, all about Greedy Smith.
Yes.
What a legend. I mean, even if it was just that song and Live It Up, you go, that's enough for any lifetime. Just a wonderful, catchy, danceable, you know, mosh pit song, but with some serious themes in it.
Yeah.
So it's... Too many times I've woken up, seen the world through bloodshot eyes.
Correct weight.
He's obviously been on a bender, and he's been on a bender because he's broken up with his missus. So just a couple of questions for you. Well, there's three actually, but the first couple of questions is, A, your relationship with the demon drink. Has that always been a healthy one? B, any appalling relationship sagas you'd like to share with me and my listeners? And the third question is, they were amazing mentally. They were all artists. Reg Mombassa, and I mean, these guys were, you know, they were painting as well as turning up at your local pub. So there you go. Take that in any order you want. Or start with the drink.
Geez, I'm a simple bloke. You have to remind me of those. So I'll start with the drink. So it is funny like that. I mean, you know, it's too many times you wake up, and when we're all 18 in inverted commas, of course, you know, you start to have a drink and discover all those sorts of things. So yes, there's been some of those nights there where you were worse for wear, and I've got 18-year-old daughters and a nearly 21-year-old bloke. So yes, it's funny when they share a couple of videos when they've been out with their mates or whatever else. So all those things, that rite of passage or whatever else. And so that was all a bit of fun along the way. I've touched wood. I've been pretty lucky not to have any major issues inside of that from a drinking point of view. And you can have a serious stand for that where it does cause a lot of issues for people. There are things there. So, you know, everything in moderation, I think. And probably the sporting stuff, you know, going through there was, you know, as I worked my way through refereeing at a younger age, you know, Saturday morning, it was the old things. You'd have to be with the Dew Wipers and do the fourth grade game at 10 o'clock in the morning and hang around to run touch in the afternoon for first grade. And so Friday nights, you know, by choice, couldn't be a big one because I was committed to doing those sorts of things. So yeah, look, I love a great red wine every now and then, or a G&T and whatever else. But I am no expert on any of those sorts of things in that. So it's just a nice quiet drink occasionally. How did you meet Fiona? We met through... Fiona being your wife, sorry. That's right, yeah. Yes, she's the ever-suffering poor thing. She's still putting up with me. We met through a mate of mine from high school. So they went to uni, so she was a teacher originally, so they went to university together, and he was saying, oh, you know, I've got a friend of mine, and they were just good mates, and, you know, you should meet her, etc. Yeah, okay, whatever. And we were down at his place on a Saturday night or something, and she was going to come down. So she's come and knocked on the door, and I've said to Dale, this mate of mine, you know, look, hang on, I'll go there and answer the door. So she's going, oh, hi, I'm Fiona. I said, great, nice to meet you. What are you after? And she's going, oh, and the smile sort of disappeared to a, have I got the right house? And I said, well, how can I help you? Oh, this is Dale's house, isn't it? I said, Dale. Nah, sorry, there's no Dale that's here. Oh, hang on, he's 2 houses down there. You're looking for that one. I'm sure I've been there. I don't know. And then he comes around the corner. He couldn't hold himself. So that was her introduction to me, and she's still been with me ever since. God bless.
And how long have you guys been an item?
So we'll be together 30 years this year, so 1992.
Congratulations.
So actually it's quite funny. So 8th of August 1992, and that's our daughters were born on the 8th of August as well.
Well, 15th of August 1992 is Kate and I.
Oh, there you go.
We are living parallel lives, mate, with the twin daughters and the 30-year union.
And we got married in 95, so we're coming on 27 years this year.
Good on you, mate. We're coming to your place, your fourth choice on Five of My Life, and I am delighted that you have gone there, mate. You have chosen on a rugby union field. Surprise me. Why have you chosen that?
Oh, look, you said one of the favourite things, and sure, love the beaches, love travelling, and there's a whole lot of other places I could put. But I think really with that is that I did a whole lot of work and was supported by a whole lot of people to get where I did at a top level and to referee and have all these wonderful, wonderful experiences. But I think part of that as well is that I was very conscious that, that as a place was a privileged position to be. So, you'll understand that, and other people that know rugby, of going to a ground, particularly for us as a young kid from Australia watching Six Nations and as it was Five Nations it was back then, etc., and going to some of these amazing grounds in South Africa and all around the world, but going to some of these amazing grounds and then understanding that, say, for a Six Nations game, people will wait an eternity to get a ticket. They're in a lottery in their local club or something like that. So for them to go to that game is like a lifetime achievement, or it's something so special, not only just for the players, we push those aside, it's for that crowd, those people that are there, and we've all been to sporting events, but to understand the history and understand that the privilege of doing that, being there, was amazing. So I was very, very conscious of that every time, of going out there. I know John Eales said, I saw a quote from him some time ago where he'd find someone in a stand and look at them. And so for us, we plied our trade offshore. So I think the most amount of time I spent away was probably 6 months in a year.
Wow. In one block?
No. So you're away to New Zealand this weekend and then there. So by the time I add up 3 days here, 2 weeks there, something there. So there's a long time. So it's a big sacrifice, for family, particularly with Fiona. I mean, we had 3 kids under 2 at one stage, So I can't do what I do without her doing what she did inside of that, So I'm eternally grateful. And ultimately, you've got to recognise that it can be a very selfish career in some ways. But I took her away when we could, et cetera, et cetera. But back to the matter at hand, there is really about seeing the faces in the crowd and understanding how much they're enjoying that, and it's their grand final every week and they want their team to win, et cetera. And then of course there's the other part around that, is for whatever's going on in your life, for 80 minutes you can just leave it alone. Yeah. Whether you're doing a schoolboys game out the back of Upper Bucka West, or whether you're doing a first grade game, or whether you're doing a test match and all those sorts of things. So I think that was part of it. And then the other part, of course, is then being in that world of high performance and excellence. And, I've been very privileged to be on the football field with some of the greatest footballers that have ever played the game. And to see the skill and the way they operate and, be involved inside of all of that, it's always been a fascination for me, and it's always been around learning for me and then understanding people and all of those sorts of things, So why do some players falter at this level when they're really good there? Why can't some referees make it, or whatever the case may be? So it's certainly a gladiatorial place that is certainly at that highest level. There's something unique about each of those people to actually get there and be on that field, let alone representing their country. And so, you could be in Wales and it's just, wonderful, because you're hearing the Welsh national anthem, and then they might be playing against Scotland, so you hear the Scottish anthem or whatever it may be, the Irish, et cetera, to be, the distance you and I are from the table away from a harker on, 20, 30, 40 occasions in my career, and some people only get to see it on the TV or from a distance in the crowd, so to speak, then, pretty special. Special times.
Looking at there was one particular highlights reel, I think, at your dinner held in your honour, but looking at lots of YouTube clips, you have been in the centre of the action at a number of, the biggest games in the world, over a decade and more. If you had to choose, if I pressed you for the most memorable match, I know you've done Tri-Nations, Lions, World Cups, there's no level you haven't been at, but if I had to press you for the most memorable match, what would you choose? There's
probably 2 or 3 there that for different reasons, so maybe a fourth one if I had, obviously my first ever test match. So you're representing Australia B Test. It was Papua New Guinea versus Tahiti, 98-0, 45 degrees. But I pulled on an Australian jersey, and I was representing Australia, so a childhood dream had come true.
Good on you.
But clearly, one of the biggest ones then was my first A international, which was Wales and South Africa in 98, pardon me. And they were rebuilding Cardiff Arms Park for the World Cup the following year. So lucky me, got to go and referee at the old Wembley Stadium. So as a young kid growing up, seeing the soccer there and on TV, so this legendary field, a stadium, just incredible to be there. Then I had 2 of the world's best leading referees from up there, so Jim Fleming and Ed Morrison. Then I got to meet the great Bill McLaren. So for those that don't know, if you're a rugby league tragic, think Ray Warren, but on steroids, one of the greatest callers in the game. And so I got to meet him and spend a little bit of time with him before the game, which was amazing. And that was incredible. And a by story of that was that when I went up to Scotland the first time after that, might have been 12 months later or something like that, one of the guys said, Bill McLaren's invited you around for morning tea. I said, that's lovely. Isn't that nice? And he said, he doesn't normally invite people around for morning tea. I went, right, okay. Well, that's lovely. So I got to go and spend time with Bill and his wife, Bet, see and it reminds me of seeing stories on Bruce McAvaney of these notes that he took and the dedication, the preciseness with which he did all of his research so that he could honour the game and the people and everything else. So that was amazing inside of that, of doing that game. I think the South Africans were on a winning streak. The Welsh were under Graham Henry as the great redeemer, and the Welsh were actually winning until a guy came on as a streaker. And then, that sort of cut the momentum for them. But the South Africans came back. I gave a penalty try inside of that. Robin McBride, who was the Welsh hooker afterwards, he had a beer and he just said, fair play to mate. First test, I didn't think you'd have the balls to do that. So so that was amazing. The other one, of course, is then the Lions. I did the Lions in South Africa, British and Irish Lions. So they tour every 4 years, for those that aren't aware of rugby, and it is a massive following, and it's one of the great things that, whilst we have a professional game, but it has stayed as that. It's a professional era, but they've stayed as that tradition, which is just awesome inside of the game. And the thousands of people that travel, the sea of red that go there. So I had the third test. The South Africans had won the series, but it was still an amazing event at Johannesburg there. It's in the cauldron down below, full house, just the noise there. Again, that whole privileged piece of actually I'm refereeing this game and seeing these people that have travelled, put the hard-earned money to get there to see this, every 4 years, and just an incredible experience. And then probably one of the final ones, just purely around just atmosphere. So I did Ireland versus England at Twickenham, and it was the day they were opening the new South Stand. So it used to be a wooden deck, and then they moved it around, then they eventually closed it off. So what you see now is a full circular stadium. And the noise in that place was unbelievable. And it was just one of those things, and you still get goosebumps now of, the English guys, you're playing advantage because you can look up and you can see, and this is one of the greatest things about refereeing, where you're on song and you can see the game and say something's going to come here and give these guys an opportunity to score. It doesn't matter whether it's the green team, the white team, whichever, who cares? It's just the game. And so they start to spin the ball out wide and you can see the overlap coming. And then the final pass goes, and the crowd and the crescendo of this noise is incredible. So I sort of turn right as the winger comes running around whoever's going to score, and it's just a matter of just this noise going, oi, 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 in your ears as you're running in. And I looked into the crowd there at one stage, and you could see, a couple of blokes there just jumping for joy and just unbridled, love of the game, their team, they've scored, etc. And you just go, geez, I'm a lucky bloke. Geez, what a place to be,
Oh, just wonderful. Well, I'm going to be a fun sponge and flip it around, and we can edit this bit out if you don't want to answer the question. But if you were on the therapist's couch and I was to say, what's the one mistake that makes you wake up screaming? Ah! If there is one.
There's two.
Oh, excellent.
One, there's probably 1,000 of them, but there's one that wakes up screaming, just going, what are you doing, you idiot? Actually, they both do part of that. The first one is up in Queensland. I think I talked about originally, the young tree bends with the wind and stands taller, so as to speak. So I was doing a game Queensland and whoever they were playing, and there was an injury. There's a penalty to Queensland. John Eales was setting up for the kick at goal. Then there was an injury, so I wandered across and saw the player was coming back, and for whatever reason, John has just decided he's coming back, we'll just kick the goal. So bang, and it sails through, and then I've blown the whistle and just gone, no, stop, we haven't called time back on again, and like, you idiot. And of course, then he lines it up, and I think he got the kick again. No, he might have missed it this time, whatever it did. But stupid me has just gone, mate, the older version says, just blow the whistle for the goal, who cares, it went off, et cetera, et cetera. And the other one that is just, it's you talked about that calmness and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure you've had all those times where you're looking at something and your mind is just somewhere else for whatever reason. So I had a game with South Africa and New Zealand, yes. And one of the New Zealand blokes has picked a South African bloke up and sort of dropped him, and it should have been a yellow card or a red card or something. Yeah, a better decision should have been made. Whatever it was, I think should have been a red card. I think I gave a yellow card or a penalty or something. No, I gave a red card. That's right. And then in my report was A, B, C, D, E, F. Then they go, have you had a look at the video? And I said, well, yeah, no. And then you look at the video, and I've seen A, B, and C. And then you look at the video and then there's there's X, Y, and Z that's actually happened. I said, well, I didn't see that. Well, look at you looking straight at it. And so I'm there just looking at this thing, and then whatever I saw, whatever I thought, and you just go, throw my hands at the mercy of the court.
You were doing a shopping list.
I was off somewhere else, but planet Mars must have looked good or something like that. So it's just funny how you can just do those things and you just go, wow, that's ordinary. And then there was plenty of press written and all that sort of stuff. So
I think you are. I mean, I need to thank you, mate, because you have been a legend for the game and the service that you've given it. And there aren't many professions where you turn up on Monday and 10 million people have watched what you've done at the weekend on telly and felt, perfectly fine in criticising or whatever. So you've just, it's a sensation. And on a different podcast, I could talk to you for 10 hours just about rugby, but I'm not going to. I'm going to move you on to my favourite choice on Five of My Life, which is the possession. And you have chosen as your possession on Five of My Life your New South Wales Police Commissioner's Medal of Valour. Describe it and tell us the story behind it.
Yeah, I think probably in choosing this one was really probably about, there's lots of other things I've got and whatever. There'd be memorial things from rugby, etc. But this one I think was probably some of those defining moments in life. So, to get straight to the point, I mean, there was a time there that it was either the exit door and you're being put in the ground by whoever's going to put you in there, or you can come out the other side.
So you are a police officer at this
That's right, yeah. So I was working in a place called Special Operations Group, which was one of the original sort of anti-theft squads, undercover type thing or whatever else. And so we used to, probably one of the things to say, we used to get around in, pretty crappy gear and all that sort of stuff. It was funny. One of the guys that was working at Australian Rugby at the time, and I was still making my way through as a referee, and he said, I saw him at a game, and he said, I saw you on Thursday. Oh, why didn't you say hello? He said, I didn't want to. He said, you looked like shit, and I could just tell you were looking for something. And something was going on, and then the next minute you guys all pulled your guns out and grabbed some bloke and did something or other. So I said, probably better you didn't then, mate, no dramas at all. Anyway, so we used to get around and look at some of the hot spots of crime and all that sort of stuff. And so we were doing a night shift or something, so I think it was 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever else. And we drove up and saw a guy sort of go around the side of one of the hotels. So I've sort of bailed out, and my mate drove around the corner, and he was going to come up and drive into the car park. So I've sort of had a bit of a skulk around and then heard a noise, and obviously my brain later on would have said, okay, that was him breaking a glass to get in there. So I've sort of wandered into this alcove, and I'm in the light, and then there's some darkness there where the guy is. You can sort of make a bit of a silhouette, and the next minute he's sort of come out, and, goodness gracious me, what are you doing here, in other language, of course. And so I've just sort of, and then I could see him in his right hand. He had obviously there was a pistol or a revolver or something, but a weapon. And so he's brought that up. So I've just sort of played a little bit dumb and sort of, what's going on, mate? Because I was in shitty clothes and whatever else, so he wouldn't have known who I was. Anyway, then he started to get a bit more serious, and he's gone bang and jabbed it in, and a few more words. So then I've just identified myself as a police officer, mate. This is not going to be good for you, mate. Suggest you probably put that down, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, then it was on. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. So one of the things I did do is I had my hand, so it's in my stomach, and I've got my left hand sort of grabbing him. He's got
a gun in your stomach.
So he's put it in.
Nice.
And then saying things along the lines of, I'm going to shoot you and kill you, fill in the blanks of all the nice language, that his grandmother wouldn't want to hear. And then, so I grabbed the top of the gun, and then for some reason in my head, I just went, get your finger in behind the trigger. So the old, bird finger, social finger, just bang, just straight in behind the trigger. And then, I've got a little scar on there now that still stays there. And sort of, so I've ended up got the gun with both hands, now. So we're having a wrestle and a fight, and he's telling me what he's going to do to me and all that sort of stuff. And anyway, we came barreling out of this thing, and the partner that was in the car had come up, and he couldn't see us. And then he was probably 20 metres away, and there's a bollard there, and we've gone flying back, and I've just gone straight to the bollard on my back and still held on to this bloke. And then wrestled with him a bit more. But Craig was saying at the time, he said, I just saw you bloke shoot out. And he said, I could see it was a fight for life.
Right.
Not just a wrestle of some pissed idiot or whatever else. And so anyway, we wrestled around a bit more, and Craig came across, and we helped grab the gun off him, subdued him, put the handcuffs on him, and then had a look at the gun, and it was a revolver. So I opened it up, and he went, I was feeding him, mate. He's got 6 in the chamber here. So, yeah, good. He was going to try and do what he did. So we managed to subdue him, and people came from everywhere, and then he got locked up and, went to court and all that sort of stuff, and got what he got, and that was life, and I moved on.
And that night, did you go home and burst into tears, start shaking, faint, or any post-traumatic anything, or just a day in the life of?
No, I mean, we went, obviously I hit my back, and so I went up to hospital, and then my boss at the time had rang the oldies, so the old man came up, and I said, you all right, mate? And yeah, no, I'm okay. And then there's that time afterwards where, there's some days there where you sort of sit and go, holy shit, and that was the whole point of it, of, there's either exit stage left, or what are you going to do? And so so I guess part of the reason is that I guess a lot of people talk about being tested, or, I'd do this and I'd do that. Well, I guess in my own mind that I was tested, and I did something about it, and, we could clean something up. The interesting part of that was, and I think it was a cusp of change inside of the cops there, where there's a lot of old school people, you don't need to see those psychologists, you'll be right, mate, have a beer and 400 and you'll be okay. I think one of the really good things that was part of that, and I know this gets towards this mental health piece for everybody now and everything else, was that, my boss at the time was very clear. He said, no, mate, you go and speak to the people. So, there was tears and things like that along, and any of those traumatic type things where, you're reviewing that and saying, holy hell, what's happened. But then when I went to see the psychologist, and she was fantastic, I can't remember her name now, but she was, wonderful, wonderful person, and, really professional in what she'd done. And the great thing was that when I went there, she talked about just being open and vulnerable. What are you feeling? And so I would, I'm feeling this, this, and this. Great. That's exactly where you should be. You should be at this stage. Then the next time you'd go, I'm feeling this, this, and this now. Awesome. That's exactly where you should be. So I was able to ride through a process and then come out the other end at the end of the day. So you can then compartmentalise that and put it away, and then move on without having to relive something like that. So I think that's part of the thing for anybody, is to be able to talk about things to, you're never going to forget it. It's always going to be part of what you do, but you need to compartmentalise that and close it off, as it were, because there's so many people that don't do that, and that's the issues they get.
What an amazing story. And that's what the Medal of Valour was for. I mean, I've read the citation, extreme bravery. You basically disarmed a armed felon who was pointing a gun at you point blank. I didn't realise it was in your beer gut, mate. I thought
that's it.
I thought maybe there was like a couple of feet between you.
No, we were close and personal, and He fought the law and the law won.
Well, I'll try and remember the finger in the trigger trick. It's
That's
like,
it.
Like those people who say, "Oh, Nige, if a shark attacks you, punch it on the nose." You go, "Yeah, right." As if I'm going to be thinking, punch it on the nose. I'm going to be screaming.
That's it.
It's been an absolute delight. Thank you for sharing your 5, mate. There is a 6th question I ask all my guests. Who would you like to hear on 5 of My Life next, and why?
I'm going to nominate a friend of mine, Alison Myrams. You've met Alison. She is an amazing individual, is the CEO of a construction company called Roberts Co., which was Roberts Pizzarotti, and then the family have now bought that out. And so it's an Australian-owned Tier 1 construction company that is taking on, I guess, the industry and looking at transforming that industry around, a 5-day working week and the way it operates and how they do things, et cetera, et cetera. So, a bit like the business that we've got now is around that of, people making a stand and how they work with people, et cetera. And what she's done is got an amazing story for when she started inside of that industry, the boys club, even then at a CEO level, where you've still got some of these people in the industry that still playing off against her and that organisation, I guess, for want of a better term, not understanding that, these changes need to happen because of, a number of things of suicides, marriages, breakdowns, all those sorts of things, because an industry has said, no, mate, we've just got to keep working 6 days a week because that's what we've always done. So she's got an amazing story to tell about that and changing and transforming an industry and people and growing that business, which is awesome.
Well, what a great recommendation. We will chase her up. Stuart Dickinson, thank you so much for sharing your stories on 5 My Life.
It's been great to be here. Thank you, Nige.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you follow 5 of My Life, you might enjoy my latest book, Smart, Stupid and 60. In it, I write about a number of the issues discussed on the show. It's the 20-year follow-on from my first book, Fat, 40 and Fired. If you have any feedback on the book or suggestions for the show, please get in touch via my website, nigelmarsh.com.